Hello, my name is ScienceBeard, and today I'm talking about Amy Coney Barrett, who has given her opening speech in her confirmation hearing, and it's 12 minutes 47 seconds long. It's available on YouTube via C-SPAN, and it's well worth a watch if you're interested in that sort of thing, particularly if you don't want to take what I'm going to say at face value, and to make sure I haven't taken it out of context. But essentially, what's happening here is that you get sworn in on the Bible, which of course you have to do. Right?
Raise your right hand. Stand up, please.
If you're an atheist, you wouldn't have a chance.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give this committee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Her microphone switched
Welcome
off, that's why I can't
to the
hear.
committee, to your family. You've done a great job over there. The floor is yours, Judge.
So, then she talks about her family for a good long while, so I'm going to skip that. I think it's around about sort of 5 minutes that she actually starts.
English majors. And when I did my first, received similar encouragement from the devoted teachers at St. Mary's Dominican, my all-girls high school in New Orleans. When I went to college, it never occurred to me that anyone would consider girls less capable than boys. My freshman year, I took a literature class filled with upperclassmen English majors. And when I did my first presentation, which was on Breakfast at Tiffany's, I feared I had failed. But my professor took the time to talk to me. She filled me with confidence about how well I had done, and she became a mentor. And when I graduated with a degree in English, she gave me Truman Capote's collected works as a...
So that's very nice. She's a nice shout out to the teachers, lovely. She had a mentor, lovely. Why did she need a mentor if women are as capable as men? Now, I'm not against mentors. In fact, quite the opposite. I think that a lot of people should have mentors. In fact, everybody should have mentors, you know. But she mentions that because she feels it has given her confidence. Why? If boys and girls are to be treated the same, this is the problem. It's a double-edged sword for them. You cannot talk about how you had a mentor and then pretend that everybody has a mentor and everybody has the same position to start from. And, you know, all credit due to the professor who took her under her wing, because she realized that when faced with confident young men, presumably, confident beyond their competence and ability, probably, my prejudice, but there we are. She needed some help in order to maybe just psychologically survive. And she was probably picked because she was a bright young thing. Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. But there's a problem in that. I wish more people had mentors, because then we would have a fairer representation of who actually gets to study whatever things at whatever university. Okay, you might agree with that, you might not, but this is not what I was actually going to talk about. So let's look for the next bit.
Meant reaching results that he did not like.
Yes, sorry, I went a bit far.
His reasoning that shaped me. His judicial philosophy was straightforward. A judge must apply the law as it is written, not as she wishes it were.
Okay, so she basically says Judge Scalia was a major influence on her, and he said the law needs to be applied as it is written, not as you wish it was. But here's the thing. If you then say, okay, I'm going to just apply the law in a court, that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because laws need interpreting. Even if you are, let's say, a Bible-believing Christian, right? Then you have no higher authority than God, and yet people argue left, right, and center about what the proper interpretation of the Bible is. Should we take it literally? Is it a poem? Is it a great work of fiction? Has it no meaning beyond the age it came from? So I mention that because it'll become important later on. So saying that a law simply needs to apply the law as it is written is nonsense, because you need to interpret the law. Otherwise we wouldn't have courts and judges and lawyers and so forth, because nobody goes to court thinking that, I know I'm wrong and so I'm going to lose. Or very few people do that, and so therefore, I shouldn't. Should they really be going to court then? No, of course not. Everybody believes that they are in the right, and that the judge will eventually side with them, or the jury, or whoever. So anyway, so let's carry on.
In every case, I have carefully considered the arguments presented by the parties, discussed the issues with my colleagues on the court, and done my utmost to reach the result required by the law, whatever my own preferences might be. I try to remain mindful that while my court decides thousands of cases a year, each case is the most important one to the litigants involved. After all, cases are not like statutes, which are often named for their authors. Cases are named for the parties who stand to gain or lose in the real world, often through their liberty or livelihood. When I write an opinion resolving a case, I read every word from the perspective of the losing party. I ask myself how I would view the decision if one of my children was the party that I was ruling against. Even though I would not like the result, would I understand that the decision was fairly reasoned and grounded in law? That is this.
Okay, and that's a lovely sentiment, but again, it's actual nonsense, because if a court simply arrived at a ruling and all you had to do was justify it to just the people in that case, we wouldn't have cases going further up the judicial tree, if you like. We wouldn't have a Supreme Court. We would have one level of courts, and that's it. And I'm not a legal expert, but I know that there are different levels of courts. And the only difference between them is the standing of the judges. They may all have extremely valid points to make about a case. But at the end of the day, what we do is we abide by the judgment of the highest court of the land. And the idea is simply that we appoint the most capable people who've got the best knowledge about the law, and that's it. There is no other reason for us abiding by Supreme Court rules other than that we've, as a society, agreed tacitly, yes, because we've not gone and voted on it, but we agree tacitly to a lot of things, and that's one of the things. So if you've got the right to appeal, then you've got the right to appeal. That doesn't mean that the previous court ruling stands, and therefore, because then you wouldn't have a right to appeal, or you wouldn't have a sensible right to appeal. You can go back and you can ask for things to be reconsidered if it merits that. And sometimes you can raise new points, better points, and we've got two different sets of courts. We've got the one that's run by the state in terms of there's a crime against the state. For example, in I'll bring that up, O.J. Simpson case, right? So the state went, well, we think you killed somebody, and they lost, and O.J. Simpson went free, and it looked to all intents and purposes like he'd done it. Doesn't matter. He went free. Okay, so we need to abide by that. But then they went to a civil court, basically, so where people bring cases, and he lost, and he was made to pay huge amounts of damages because they obviously don't have the authority to stick him in jail. They can sue for damages, and he was cleared of the murder. But how come he had to pay money then? Because we've got two different levels of courts, or two different types of courts, and various different levels, and we've got different judgments as well. So just saying, I mean, if she said this from a point of view of the Supreme Court only, then if you're already there, then that's true, right? There's no other level to appeal to. But she knows that there are different levels of courts. Anyway, I want to go to the last bit, which I found particularly troubling.
I will be forever grateful for the path she marked and the life she led.
This is talking about
If confirmed, it would be the honor of a
RBG.
lifetime to serve
Ruth Bader
alongside
Ginsburg.
the Chief Justice and 7 Associate Justices. I admire them all and would consider each a valued colleague. And I might bring a few new perspectives to the bench. As the President noted when he announced my nomination, I would be the first mother of school-aged children to serve on the court.
No relevance whatsoever. No relevance whatsoever. Otherwise, she's young. And that's, of course, one of the aims of the Republicans, is that she will sit there for decades and decades and decades. That in itself doesn't mean anything either. She could be a brilliant mind. But she's a conservative. She's outspoken about her Catholicism, or outspoken, but she's certainly religious. And she is likely to vote down the ACA. She's likely to help overturn Roe v. Wade. And, and she comes from a solidly conservative background where people are happy to justify why they've had a good life. And they are ready to blame other people who have not quite had the same life. But again, this is actually, I've stopped too early here. I'll continue.
And I know that it would make Senators Young and Braun happy to know that I would be the first justice to join the court from the 7th Circuit in 45 years. I would be the only sitting justice who didn't attend school at Harvard or Yale, but I am confident that Notre Dame could hold its own, and maybe I could even teach them a thing or two about football. As a final note, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the many Americans from all walks of life who have reached out with messages of support over the course of my nomination. I believe in the power of prayer, and it has been uplifting to hear that so many people are praying for me. I look forward to answering the committee's questions.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, but this is the point that is really concerning. She believes in the power of prayer. Now, first things first. Prayer has scientifically been shown time and time and time again in blind, double-blind studies and all sorts of scientific investigation to do nothing. Prayer is not an effective thing to accomplish anything, right? Now, it might make you feel nice, and there are lots of, people meditate, people do yoga, people pray. Fine. But to explicitly state that she believes in the power of prayer means that she has an irrational belief which is deeply embedded in her psyche. Now, again, we all do have irrational beliefs. For example, you might find my background annoying, or my voice, or whatever. There is, when it comes to taste, there is no rationality there. Okay, or very little in the way of rationality. Some people are afraid of spiders, some people find it fascinating. Good, whatever. But if you believe in the power of prayer, then you're listening, or you're trying to listen out for God, right? And she certainly has a version of God in her mind, because she's a Catholic. She's a very devout Catholic. So that doesn't mean to say that I'm not making an argument for God existing or not existing, because actually the Catholic Church also interprets policy and morality. So she's not taking her cue entirely from the law, as she was pointing to earlier, but she will also be influenced by what she thinks is moral. And if she believes in the power of prayer, then she's appealing to a higher authority than the law. And if God speaks to her, then that is troubling. If God doesn't speak to her, then she will simply substitute, like everybody else does, what they think God would. What would Jesus do? That's the question. And it's often used as a sort of mocking thing. But how do we know that she's not going to apply it? And in fact, she rather says it outright by saying that she believes in the power of prayer. And if she believes in the power of prayer, what else does she believe in terms of things that are irrational and have been shown to be irrational and not based in reality? And this is really the crux of it. Prayer is not, the efficacy of prayer is not based in reality. So either, let's give her the most charitable reading and say, people have expressed their support for her, and they have prayed for her, and that's a nice sentiment. That's fine. But she said a sentence before, people have given me messages of support. She didn't need to say that they prayed for her, but she in fact makes it, not just even adds it onto that, but she starts a new sentence and she says, I believe. It's a standalone sentence. I'll show you that again to just highlight what I mean.
That Notre Dame could hold its own, and maybe I could even teach them a thing or two about football. As a final note, Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank the many Americans from all walks of life who have reached out with messages of support.
And that would have been absolutely fine. Brilliant. Thankful, grateful for the support. Fine. But this is a new thing that's coming now.
Over the course of my nomination.
New thing.
I believe in the power of prayer, and it has been uplifting to hear that so many people are praying for me.
So if she gets a case where there are devout Catholics or devout Christians fighting something, maybe on religious freedom grounds, can she be neutral in that? If somebody says, I pray for you and the court that you will come to the proper decision, then that's a nod to your religiosity. That's a nod to your beliefs that are not grounded in reality, not grounded solely, at least, on the facts. And if you do that, then you are already giving the parties not a fair hearing. So do I believe that religious people can't be fair? Of course they can be fair. But they don't go to lengths to point out that they believe in something which doesn't have a basis in reality. Judges don't tend to say, because I believe in God, I'm now reading you this legal opinion. No, it's based on precedent and the law and reasoning. But the reasoning can't involve something that cannot be shown to be true or false, or exist or not exist. And God is one of those things. You can't show that God doesn't exist, fair enough, but you can't show that He does exist. And you can't show that prayer has anything to do with anybody's life. I'm sure that there are people who are sick and they pray and they die, and they are sick and they don't pray and they die, and equally they survive. So people who are sick and they die and haven't prayed because maybe they're an atheist like I am, have they brought it on themselves? And that is where this is deeply disturbing. So if you believe in the power of prayer and you're positive about the power of prayer, that means that you're ready to abandon those people who are obviously not convinced, maybe of your faith, maybe of Christianity at large, but you're ready to throw them under the bus because they could just pray, couldn't they? And if things go wrong, well, you haven't prayed enough, you didn't mean it. So I hope you found that interesting, and I shall see you in the next video.